Shalom, everybody. This is a part 2 to the series, The True Religion of Evil. Before watching this video, it is encouraged that you will have seen part 1. A link for that video will be in the comment section down below. With that being said, in this video, we will do a deep dive into the religious belief systems and practices of the hidden elite and the great perversions that occurred. Let's begin.
Secretly participated in same-gender sexuality, and they quote various passages from the New Testament to demonstrate that. So he united male and female in his own person through the practice of same-gender sacred sexuality. Shabtai Tzvi even more so, because there is recorded by Sholem that Shabtai Tzvi was having anal intercourse with an Arab boy in the presence of many rabbis. And he said to them, this is a tikkun of God. This is a healing of God. This is a reunification of male and female in God.
In part 1, there was an overview behind the teachings of Shabtai Zevi and Yaakov Frank. We discussed the secret interpretation of the interconnection between the Partufim called Ima, meaning mother, and the Partufim called Zerainpin, an example, son. Here we will provide a brief recap. But first, a recap on Shabtai Zevi and Yaakov Frank.
Declared himself to be the Jewish Messiah in the year 1666. This false Messiah led the largest Messiah movement in Jewish history and attracted more than half the population of European Jews. Shabtai Zevi made everything that was holy unholy. He rejected the rules of the Jewish holy books and every standard of Jewish decency. There would be no more guilt or sin or right or wrong. No more sexual taboos, no more 10 commandments. No more fasting. Instead, there would be feasting. Shabtai Zevi's immoral leadership finally fell from grace when the Sultan of Turkey threatened him with torture unless he converted to Islam. Shabtai converted to Islam, but he brought his infectious evil theology with him. 1 century later, Jacob Frank proclaimed himself to be the reincarnation of Shabtai Zevi and the living Messiah for all Jews. Not even Shabtai Zevi was as evil as Jacob Frank and his disciples. Jacob Frank rejected traditional Judaism. He reversed the truth and told his followers, since we can't all be saints, let's all be sinners. The best way to imitate God, said Frank, is to cross every boundary, transgress every taboo, and mix, as God did, the sacred with the profane. Orgies, incest, rape, and sexual intercourse with children, including sodomy on young boys, were no longer sinful. followers were called Sabbatean Frankists. They practiced witchcraft and occult rituals, including animal and human sacrifices. Lucifer, they declared, was the true God. The Sabbatean Frankists expanded their movement by masquerading as converts to other religions. They converted to Catholicism and to Islam, where they embedded themselves and spread their Luciferian infection as closeted crypto-Jews. The Frankists traded their wives and daughters with members and with powerful non-members who they needed to seduce into their cult. Jewish professor Gershon Scholem called Jacob Frank one of the most frightening men in Jewish history. By 1776, Orthodox Jewish rabbis and leaders rejected Jacob Frank and the pagan invasion of evil that took hold in 18th century Europe. They declared Jacob Frank and his Luciferian followers to be heretics. Jewish author and historian Dr. Henry Makow has thoroughly researched the Sabbatean Frankist movement.
The Sabbatean Frankists were out and out Satanists. They believe that they have to defy any kind of natural morality, defy any kind of natural law, defy God, and they actually indulge in every kind of depravity as a form of worship, because they worship Satan. And they promoted promiscuity, and that's where our promiscuity today comes from. It's 200 or 300 years old. There's nothing new or avant-garde about it. They promoted incest, they promoted pedophilia, and every kind of sexual depravity.
Our source will be from Moach Gan Eden, The Brain of the Garden of Eden, by the chief magician of Mystery Babylon, a self-proclaimed Sabbatean Frankist. And it was stated in part 1, in the gates to the highest universe on page 133, it's written, there is a huge difference between our universe and the higher universes, but the highest universe, which I must now say is not the universe to come, is very special indeed. A little context is needed, and behold, it is written, and Rabbi Yehoshua ben Levi said, these are people who are considered important in this universe and unimportant in the universe to come. This is like the incident involving Rabbi Yosef, son of Rabbi Yehoshua ben Levi, who became ill and was about to expire. When he returned to good health, his father said to him, what did you see when you were about to die? He said to him, I saw an inverted universe. Those above were below, while those below were above. He said to him, my son, you have seen a clear or purified universe. Talmud Babli Tractate Pesachim 50a. There are many holy mysteries here. This is to teach us that there are aspects to the higher universes that are nothing like our universe, and in some respects a certain aspect and matters are a complete inversion with respect to our universe. And let us go deeper, shall we? I will begin with a super esoteric level to the mitzvah of the Torah, and lo, it is written, and if a man shall take his sister, his father's daughter, or his mother's daughter, and see her nakedness, and she see his nakedness, it is chesed, a reproach, a disgrace. Leviticus 20:17. He writes, this is very interesting. We all know that chesed signifies loving kindness to the highest degree. And as we have with many words in Hebrew, every Hebrew word is binary in essence, containing with it its thesis and antithesis. And this is clearly displayed with the word chesed. On the most esoteric level, this verse is actually referring to the chesed between Zerainpin and Malkut, brother and sister. And the universe is higher than Asiya, and so we have our first clear example of the dictum cited above. In our universe, incest is forbidden, but in the higher universes among Halokim, incest is permitted. And this is the holy mystery of the holy incestuous union between Naomi and Ruth in the mystery of Bina and Malkuth, as explained in Sefer Tzaddik Yisad HaOlam. He continues, and this brings us to the Jewish Sigmund Freud's Oedipus complex, which has its roots in the deepest, most esoteric levels of Kabbalah. For as already explained, holy sexual incest between the Divine Mother and her Divine Son is Chesed. For it is the Sephir of Chesed that is the nexus and link between mother and son, and this is the mystery of, through Tavuna, he founded the heavens, Proverbs chapter 3, verse 19. All in the mystery of Tavuna and Zerainpin. Now, he founded may also signify to be erect or firm or hard, meaning the sexual arousal of Zerainpin comes by way of Bina, channeling her chasadim through Tavuna to Zerainpin, as it is explained in the Lurianic texts. So the Oedipus complex is simply a hidden, subtle residual image of this higher archetype and construct. And these holy mysteries are explained in the Lurianic texts, where we read, "And the mouth of Yesod of Ima opened in the midst of Zerainpin," Sha'ar Pesukim, Parashas Bereshis Siman 4. "And the Yesod of Ima spread until the chest of Zerainpin," Parashas Vayetzi Siman 28. And it was explained that the Netzach Hod Yesod of the Partsufim Ima formed the Chokmah Bina Da'as of the Partsufim named Zerainpin. And the Yesod of Ima spreads in Da'as of Zerainpin, an example, the throat. And it extends down to the chest, an example, Tiferet. And the Yesod of Abba, which is within side of the Yesod of Ima, spreads to the Yesod of Zerainpin. Having this understanding in the Lurianic context, we read further. "And see, there are many other places in his gates where he discusses the ejaculation of the revealed lights that are the chasadim of Ima's phallus into Zerainpin. They interpret the Yesod of Ima, which contains the Yesod of Abba, to be hermaphroditic in nature, and that the Partsuf of Ima contains both a female reproductive organ and a male reproductive organ. And they interpret this literally, that the Yesod of Ima, which contains the Yesod of Abba, enters into Da'as of Zerainpin, which they interpret to be the throat. This is where the spreading of the Chesadim and Gevuros takes place, which they identify as ejaculation. Thus, Ima, being a hermaphrodite, is penetrating Zerainpin, which is her son, and this is an incestuous relationship as it was being described. Furthermore, it continues, "And this phallus extends all the way down to the phallus of Zerainpin, touching it and arousing it. And there are many other numerous examples of transgenderism, anal sex, oral sex, homosexuality, incest, and etc., all parabolized throughout the Lurianic texts, describing the actions and process of the highest universes. I will simply provide one more very super esoteric telistic example, proving the permissibility of homosexual incestuous pedophilia in the highest universe. And behold, it is written, when the Yesod of Abba spread in the midst of the Yesod of Zerainpin, this is called Seth, the son of Adam Rishon. Again, not only do we see Ima penetrate her son, but also Abba penetrates his own son. And this is the mystery of Seth, which also signifies buttocks. This is the mystery of, because he is the young boy Israel, I made love to him. Sefer Hosea 11:1. So we see that the Yesod of Abba extends to the Yesod of Zerainpin, which is identified as Seth, which he interprets here to be buttocks. And the spreading of the Yesod of Abba into the buttocks of, or Yesod of Zerainpin, is this incestuous relationship between father and son, and also between mother and son, which was identified as a hermaphroditic interaction. And he uses these cases to describe that in the upper worlds, pedophilia is occurring, as well as many other incestuous relationships. Now, of course, all of this is of the highest perversion. And as a result of this, in their failing to understand the true Atziluthic level, they interpreted it in these klipothic literal ways, and in having interpreted it these literal ways, they then sought to make this reality a reflection of that reality. And they said to themselves that this reality must reflect the order of the upper reality, and so they sought to make this reality in that image. Therefore, amongst the elite and amongst private class practices, they began to partake in these horrendous rituals. We find that Abba is inside of Ima, and therefore the male would put on the garments of the female. We find that Ima was inside of Zerainpin, and so the female would put on the garments of the male. It is also known that the kings of Edom died, and this referred to Malkuth, or the baby. And therefore, in many of their practices, it involved the ritualistic sacrifice of babies and children, the removal of the limbs. As it is known, the limbs of Adam Kadmon fell off. And these bizarre practices have been recorded, an example seen here.
Yes, was used also in worshiping the devil, participated in human sacrifice rituals and cannibalism. She says her family has been involved in rituals for generations. She is currently in extensive therapy, suffers from multiple personality disorder, meaning she's blocked out many of the terrifying and painful memories of her childhood. Meet Rachel, who is also in disguise to protect her identity. You come from generations of ritualistic abuse?
Yes, my family has an extensive family tree, and they keep track of who's been involved and who hasn't been involved. And it's gone back to, like, 1700.
And so you were...
Right. I was born into a family that believes in this.
And does everyone else think it's a nice Jewish family? From the outside, you appear to be a nice Jewish girl.
Definitely.
And you all are worshiping the devil inside the home?
Right. There's other Jewish families across the country. It's not just my own family.
Really? And so who knows about it? Lots of people now.
I talked to a police detective in the Chicago area, and several of my friends know, and I've spoke publicly before.
And so when you were brought up in this kind of evilness, did you just think it was normal?
I've blocked out a lot of the memories I had because of my multiple personality disorder. But yes, I mean, it's like if you grow up with something, you think it's normal. Mm-hmm. I always thought...
So what kinds of things? You don't have to give us the gory details, but what kinds of things went on in the family?
Well, there would be rituals in which babies would be sacrificed, and you would have to, you know...
Babies?
There were people who bred babies in our family. No one would know about it. A lot of people were overweight, so you couldn't tell if they were pregnant or not, or they would supposedly go away for a while and then come back. The other thing I want to point out, not all Jewish people sacrifice babies. I mean,
no.
It's not a very difficult thing.
This is the first time I heard of any Jewish people sacrificing babies. But anyway, so you witnessed the sacrifice?
Right. When I was very young, I was forced to participate in that, in which I had to sacrifice an infant.
And the purpose of sacrifice is to what? Is to bring you what? What are you sacrificing for?
For power.
Uh-huh. Power. And so, were you ever used? Were you ever used yourself?
I was molested. I was raped several times.
And what's your mother doing?
She's...
In all of this? What's her role in all of this?
I'm not exactly what her role is. I haven't, recovered all of my memories, but her family was extremely involved. Mm-hmm. She brought me to it. Both of my parents brought me to it.
And where is she now?
She's lives in the Chicago metropolitan area. She's on the Human Relations Commission of the town that she lives in, and she's an upstanding citizen. Nobody would suspect her.
Were you raised with a sense of right and wrong, Rachel?
Yes. I mean, it's like I had both. I mean, to the outside world, everything we did was proper and right, and then there were the nights that things changed, that things just got turned around. What was wrong was right, and what was right was wrong. That's what helps to create somebody to develop MPD.
Mm-hmm. Multiple personality.
Right.
Now, in your family, did you all call it worshiping the devil?
No, I don't know.
It was just evil, things you did.
Right. Well, I said it was evil, and they said it was good. There's a book that I had just come across called Lilith's Cave, which is a book of Jewish mysticism and supernatural. And there's a lot in that book that relates to what I, endured when I was a child.
Now, in the gate of the opening of the tent, he continues, we have already explained how sight is all in the mystery of sexual copulation in another gate. See there. So he states, and Yudke Vavke appeared unto him in the plains of Mamre, and he sat in the opening of the tent in the heat of the day. The opening of the tent is all in the mystery of Malkuth and the divine pudendum. As is well known, Avraham is the mystery of Aver Ma, meaning the phallus of Ma. Abraham here represents the clitoris and phallus of Malkuth. An example of that androgynous nature, the hermaphroditic nature of having both the penis and the vagina. In Abraham is this representation. Accordingly, he continues on. The heat of the day alludes to the great sexual arousal taking place. 280 Imkalel, Mamre. These are all of the dinim judgments that are about to be channeled. 280 is the numerical value of the 5 Sophite letters, and these are the 5 Gevurot. And these 5 Gevurot are being channeled, as it was spoken earlier about the Chasadim being channeled. In this place, the Gevurot are being channeled. It continues, and he lifted up his eyes and looked, and lo, 3 men stood by him, and when they saw him, and he ran to meet them from the opening of the tent, and they bowed toward the ground. Again, Abraham lifting up his eyes signifies sexual arousal and copulation. The term "and he ran" can be translated as "he desired," signifying sexual arousal. An example, "to meet them" can be translated as "ejaculated over them," coming from the root signifying ejaculation. The 3 men bend over, again signifying copulation. They prostrate towards the ground, who is Malkuth, since they are being penetrated by her phallus, who is Abraham. Now the 3 men may signify Chokmah, Bina, and Da'as of Berea, who are receiving the Shefa from Malkuth of Atzilus, or they may signify the 3 universes below Malkuth of Atzilus, all receiving the Shefa from her, as is known. In the mystery of thy Malchus is the Malchus of all the universes. Next we read, let a little water, I pray you, be fetched, and wash your feet, and rest yourselves under the tree. Washing of feet signifies sexual copulation, is well known. This is the mystery of King David requesting Uriah to wash his feet, as explained by our ancient sages, and see there under the tree certainly, as it is written, as the apple tree among the trees of the wood, so is my beloved among the sons. I sat down under his shadow with great delight, and his fruit was sweet to my taste. All in the mystery of fellatio. The tree is the phallus, or Abraham, given the name Avraham, is not mentioned here, and this is the supernal hint. So he states that the guests coming to meet Abraham in the heat of the day signified that they were being bent over by Abraham, and he was penetrating them rectally, and that this is a prime example of the necessity of the requirements of these types of copulations, these incestuous, pedophiliac, homosexual orgies that are taking place amongst these people. And he's advocating here that this story of Abraham and the 3 visitors signifies Abraham ejaculating over them, bending them over as they prostrate, and penetrating them. He then mentions that the washing of the feet of King David by Uriah is Uriah giving him homosexual fellatio. Under the tree, an example under the phallus. And he continues. Next we read, and he stood over them under the tree, meaning under the phallus, and they did eat. An example, fellatio. Over them certainly, and eating is all in the mystery of sexual copulation, as already explained in another gay, as it is written. Rav Yitzhak said, from the day the temple was destroyed, the taste of intercourse was taken and given to sinners. An example, the taste of intercourse. And so now he's hinting about the homosexual copulation of a male having another male's a penis in their mouth. So it states, stolen waters are sweet, and bread and eaten in secrecy, is tasty, and sealed in numerous places in the Talmud where eating represents sexual copulation. Regarding this, he gives a section in regards to the homosexual fellatio of man-on-man action. An example, Abraham ejaculating over these 3 other men, and David apparently having Uriah give him fellatio. Regarding Shabtai Zvi, the Reb of the Chief Magician of Mystery Babylon says the following:
secretly participated in same-gender sexuality, and they quote various passages from the New Testament to demonstrate that. So he united male and female in his own person through the practice of same-gender sacred sexuality. Shabtai Zvi even more so, because there is recorded by Sholem that Shabtai Zvi was having anal intercourse with an Arab boy in the presence of many rabbis. And he said to them, this is a tikkun of God. This is a healing of God. This is a reunification of male and female in God.
Now these great perversions then culminated into magical ritual and practices by which they would seek to conceive spiritual and demonic entities, this being the secret practices of the OTO, a very perverted form of Western occultism that was founded by Sabbatean Frankist orders that continued to persist down the line. As seen in explanation here via their creation of the homunculus. Now, Aleister Crowley as well fell into these perversions, and one of his chief disciples would later go on to found one of the major jet propulsion companies that associated themselves with NASA. He too was in the practice of orgies and bizarre sexual practices in which he tried to impregnate a homunculus by the name of Babylon. And we see this as it is demonstrated here.
Quite a journey.
Yeah, I'm really enjoying this. So last time we kind of left off with this idea of a homunculus, this magically created being.
Right.
I'm really curious to hear more about this.
Well, it's a concept that really captures the imagination.
Yeah.
And the book presents a few different interpretations of what the homunculus actually is.
Okay, well, what are those?
Well, one perspective is that it's a literal physical being.
Okay.
Created through alchemical processes.
So like a tiny human.
Like a tiny human, yeah.
Brought to life?
Brought to life in a lab.
Sort of magic.
Yeah, almost like a
Frankenstein kind of thing.
Yeah, Frankenstein, but with magic.
Right.
But the book does point out that achieving this would be incredibly difficult.
Sure.
Even for the most skilled magician. Right. So it's probably more of a theoretical possibility than a practical one.
What's the second interpretation?
The second interpretation focuses more on the psychological or spiritual level.
Okay.
So instead of a physical being,
right,
the homunculus represents a transformation within the individual.
So it's like it's not external, it's internal.
It's something that's cultivated through spiritual practice and magical work.
So kind of creating a new self.
Yeah, a new perfected self.
Right, a more evolved self.
Exactly. It's about spiritual evolution.
Okay, and then what about that third, darker interpretation?
Yeah, the third one's a bit more sinister.
Okay.
It suggests that the homunculus could be a demonic or spiritual entity that takes possession.
Like a possession,
Yeah, of a human being.
Okay.
Essentially replacing their soul.
So it's not creating something new. It's inviting something in.
Exactly. It's a spiritual takeover.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah.
So we've got these different interpretations, but the book also outlines a specific method for creating one, right?
Yeah. And this is where the sex magic comes in.
Ah, of course.
It involves a carefully selected man and woman
Okay.
who engage in continuous ritualistic intercourse
Okay.
within a specially prepared temple.
Oh, all right. Sounds intense.
Yeah, it's about harnessing that sexual energy and directing it towards a specific goal.
Okay.
And when the woman becomes pregnant, she's taken to a remote location, ideally like a vast desert, to minimize the chance of other souls.
Right. So you want to isolate.
Isolate. Yeah. Keep it controlled.
Right. And then what?
Well, then the magician performs daily evocations, calling forth the specific spirit that they want to embody.
So you're trying to shape.
You're shaping the soul of the homunculus.
Right. Even before it's born.
Even before it's born.
Wow. Okay.
And throughout the pregnancy, the woman is surrounded by books and images and ideas that align with the nature.
Right. To kind of program it.
Yeah, you're programming the environment.
Right.
Creating the ideal conditions. For this spirit to take root.
So, and then the birth itself.
The birth, ideally, should be aligned with favorable astrological conditions.
So astrology plays a role, too.
Astrology, sex magic, spirit evocation.
Right. It's all coming together here.
Ritual, it's all woven together.
Wow.
And once the child is born, it has to be dedicated, purified, and consecrated. According to the specific planet or element or sign.
Right. So it's like you're customizing this being.
It's a custom-made spiritual being.
Wow. Oh, yeah. And what's the end goal here?
Well, the book describes the end result as a being with a perfect human form, possessing all the powers and privileges of humanity, but with this added essence of the chosen force.
So it's about power, ultimately.
It's about power, yeah. The power to create life, to shape destiny, and to command this force.
It's pretty heady stuff.
It is.
By day, Jack Parsons seemed to be a man of science and logic. Little did his friends and family know that he was leading a double life, casting magic spells at night in the hopes that the universe would help his dreams come true. He met the magician Aleister Crowley and became deeply involved with the occult. They believed in a belief system called Thelema. Their mantra was, "Do what thou wilt," which was a way of manifesting their wants and desires into existence. Aleister Crowley had grown up in a strict Quaker household where his parents raised him to read the Bible on a daily basis. Later in life, he was able to attend Cambridge University, where it became evident that he had a genius-level IQ. He wholly rejected the teachings of the Bible and focused instead on secularism. However, anything against Christianity was interpreted as being demonic. Crowley fully embraced this as part of his identity, calling himself the Beast and attempting to summon powerful demons to come to his aid. From the time Jack Parsons was experimenting with rockets in his backyard as a kid, the idea that man could actually go into space was still a fantasy. Many people refused to believe that it could one day be real. And while it's hard for us to imagine now, the mere suggestion that man could reach the moon was considered to be rather sinful. While Thelema has plenty of spooky and paranormal elements to their religion, their core belief system was actually not too far away from many New Age beliefs and modern-day publications like The Secret, which calls the concept the law of attraction. Practitioners of Thelema did, in fact, believe in magic, but it wasn't just card tricks and parlor games. They practiced sex magic, which is exactly what it sounds like. They believed that the intense feeling people have while having an orgasm opens a gate to the universe. They believed that in that small window of opportunity, it is possible for a human being to perform a magic spell. All they really needed to do to perform this spell was to focus on their intention while having sex, and their wish would come true because it was put out into the universe. Jack Parsons became the leader of his own group, and they would have huge sex magic orgies at his mansion in Pasadena. Not surprisingly, Parsons' wife did not enjoy this sort of lifestyle, so she left him. He began to have an affair with his wife's sister, Sarah Northrop Hollister, who believed very strongly in the occult. Unlike her sister, she actually enjoyed participating in these orgies, and Jack Parsons was just one of many men in the group that she would practice sex magic with. While it may not surprise anyone, Aleister Crowley was addicted to sex, and multiple orgasms in one day were no longer enough to satisfy him. He experimented with drugs, and he eventually became addicted to heroin, which was his downfall. At one of Jack Parsons' meetings, he and Sarah Hollister met a science fiction writer named L. Ron Hubbard. If that name sounds familiar to you, it's because Hubbard would go on to found the cult of Scientology. But at this time, he was one of the very few sci-fi writers who were writing in such detail about the possibility of sending humans into space. As a hardcore sci-fi nerd, Jack Parsons was thrilled to meet L. Ron Hubbard and invited him to join in on their parties as much as he wanted. Parsons believed that he could summon a goddess named Babylon. She is described as being the great mother of the earth and a symbol of sexually liberated women. He asked his followers to participate in a project called the Babylon Working. He thought that through all of these sex magic rituals, the Scarlet Woman would come along to give birth to the Moon Child. They believed that this child could be raised to aspire to travel to space instead of holding on to the comforts of Earth. They never actually gave birth to a real baby because they hoped that this would be more of a symbolic gesture for future generations of mankind. The Scarlet Woman was a symbol of free love throughout the world, so people could have sex outside of marriage more openly. In a way, you could actually say that this spell actually worked. Just a few years later, the United States entered the space race and the entire world turned on their televisions to watch the first steps onto the moon. In the 1960s, the hippies then spread the free love movement that Parsons had hoped for. Maybe, just maybe, all of that sex magic actually ended up working.
Now, this is at the limits of what can be said. The child sacrifice, pedophilia, bizarre orgies, hermaphroditic natures, and all of the great perversions of the elite. Understand that the highest worlds were interpreted in this manner according to them, and thus the highest echelons of society here in this world reflect the orders of all of these perversions. Thus, at the highest levels of our societies, we find all of these perversions prevalent. There is much more that can be said, but this is far more than what need to be said. Without question, the mysteries that have been revealed in this video are par none the highest ode to the reality of what is actually occurring. Now you may understand the Diddy parties and the Epstein Islands and all of the other bizarre things and happenings that are taking place. Wake up, open your eyes, as they are. It is also important to understand that these elite that practice these things are highly initiated at the highest levels. The perversions took place at the highest levels, and therefore you must not underestimate the reality of what is occurring. These people are very high IQ and SQ and look down upon you as inferior beasts. Those who claim to be involved with any of these matters here on the internet are grifters and fools that involve themselves in things they do not fully comprehend or understand. Discord rejects and Skype group rejects that gather up and in secret discuss their bizarre fantasies and other degenerate activities with perversions in the Kabbalah, such as the foolish Nazarene Mamzer, Ein, the great blind buffoon, and other fools that mock around and play dress-up Frankist and Sabadian, while they themselves in truth are garbing themselves in complete degeneracy, garbing themselves in permissibility of pedophilia, taking upon themselves acts of degradation. These charlatans exist here on the internet, unfortunately, but the true elites, the real Frankists and Sabadians, they exist and do not find themselves in Discord groups or worthless Skype groups, but are very real. Shalom Selah.